Hello everyone, welcome. It is Wednesday, it is 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It is office hours. Hey Andrew, how are things?
Well, I figured out how to use my mute and unmute button, so I think that's a benefit. And I'm staying warm.
Two big milestones. Very good.
I should get a gold star for that or something.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
Good
thank
stuff.
you. How are you doing?
All good, same here. I already knew the mute thing, but yeah, keeping warm also. So
Good.
that,
It's a little chilly today. My daughter was supposed to have horseback riding, and they said no horseback riding, but you are going to learn how to take care of the horses tonight. So, very important
she's
stuff.
cleaning stalls. Great. Yeah, that's a character building exercise, I can tell you.
Well, exactly. As your better half would say, that's a lot of the fun of having horses, right?
Fun is such a wide definition, but all right. Let's go back to something that actually is fun.
All right.
Geek items.
Indeed. It turns out not everybody's joining us for comedy hour today.
No, no, I don't think
um,
so.
but that's all right. It's a good thing that we have some community news to share as always this week.
Shall I share your screen? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir. That would be perfect.
All right. Da-dum and da-dum.
All right. So the first thing that I have here, it's funny. This gentleman has been quite busy. It seems like for the last several months, and I may have even mentioned that last week. Ugur Cook put out another new tool over the last week called the Device Offboarding Manager. This is a GUI based in PowerShell that he's put together that will help you offboard devices from Intune, Autopilot, and Entra ID. It's fantastic to see another one of these tools coming out because this is a question that Johan and I get off fairly often. How do we keep our environments clean? Because when we're dealing with Intune, of course, we're not just dealing with device objects in Intune. We do have device objects in Entra. We do have device objects in Autopilot. Sometimes we even have them in Active Directory if we're doing a hybrid scenario. So we do have to make sure that those things are they take care in feeding. They have to be maintained. They have to be clean. So I'm going to share both Ugur's GitHub repository for the device offboarding manager, but he also put together a nice video that goes through the usage of the tool. It is still preview. I think this is actually a v.1 if I saw correctly. So please keep that in mind when you are running the tool. Make sure you test. But the more testing that goes on, usually with these types of tools, the more testing, the better off the project is. So thank you, Ugur, for another community contribution. He has been, as I said, a very busy gentleman recently. Another thing I came across was a fantastic blog post by Ben Whitmore over on the MS Endpoint Manager blog, a deep dive on the Microsoft Graph SDK authentication methods. There are several ways that you can authenticate to Graph. So he sort of goes through some of these, how we can even use Key Vault, how we can use secrets, certificates in order to authenticate in various ways. We're not always going to be authenticating to Graph interactively, in that I'm not necessarily always going to be in a PowerShell or an Azure Shell command prompt accessing Graph through just that method. But oftentimes we'll have scheduled tasks running, we'll have jobs that get triggered by one means or another, whether it's a webhook or an API or something like that. So we have a lot of options, and knowing what those options are and when is the best to use them, as well as use them in a secure manner, is incredibly important. So a fantastic post here. As you can see, going through this post, there are a lot of examples and a lot of explanations for this. I think it was last week we were talking about one of Ben's light deep dives, and typically they are not that. But if there's any information you need about authenticating a graph, it's likely that you're going to get it out of this post from Ben right here. Also saw that the Nordic Virtual Summit is returning next month, February 7th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. CET, which would be, probably should have thought about that before I said that out loud. Probably 6 hours ahead of us, Johan, is that correct?
That would be 7 hours.
7 hours, all right. I knew I have my world clock here with me. Thank you, sir. So this will be about 2 a.m. our time. But hopefully we can catch some of this as well. Fantastic event. You've spoken at this before, haven't you?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps.
Well, it's a great event nonetheless. Fantastic speakers there, as always. A lot of our friends speaking at this event. So if you can make it, please go ahead and register and check that out.
Yeah, historically they have not been recorded, so you kind of have to show up.
Can do one of two things: either drink a whole bunch of coffee the night before and just stay up, or get up early. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. I did also want to give a little bit of an update on something that we talked about last week. We had a question come in about how we could check the status, the assignment status of a particular profile or policy in Intune, but through Graph. So I'm still working on it, and the reason that I'm still working on it is this is one of those things that I've come across where it's not explicitly simple to just grab a commandlet out of the PowerShell Graph SDK. So I've done a little bit of digging. First and foremost, one of the tools that I used, it's a favorite of mine, but Matt mentioned it last week when we were talking about this, is Graph X-Ray. And I wanted to just show you real quick. This is sort of my starting point for figuring out how we can access this information. So Graph X-Ray is a browser extension that we can install, and it becomes available here in our network tools or our developer tools within Edge. And what Graph X-Ray does is grabs the Graph API calls that are being made in the browser tab that we currently have open. So you can see when I head over to the Windows devices, for example, we'll start to see Graph calls that show, give me all of the devices based on a certain filter. So for example, this is a pretty large filter, but we can see that this is making a call to the device management endpoint, device management managed devices, which then shows us all of the Windows devices and populates the window as we would expect here, the browser tab as we would expect with the Windows devices that are available. So what I was looking into, and what the question was related to, was if we go to configuration profiles, for example, how do we get access to wait a minute, I'm sorry, I'm going to the wrong place. If I go to a specific device, so let's go to one that's on right now, maybe right here. And if I go to device configuration, how do I get this information right here? The state of these individual configuration profiles. At least this is where I wanted to start, and I also wanted to get application state and compliance state as well. Now with Graph X-Ray, we'll get some of that information right here. So it shows me a PowerShell commandlet. I'm not even going to attempt to say this one out loud here because it is a mouthful, that's for sure, as some of these procedurally generated commandlets are. But this, if I just copy and paste this right here into Visual Studio Code or PowerShell, this isn't going to get me the information that I need right out of the gate. Either because this commandlet doesn't function exactly as X-ray is telling me right here, or I don't have exact access to this endpoint. So you kind of have to do, my point here, my long-winded point, is that you have to do a little bit of reverse engineering. So we can do that by finding using this API endpoint here. We see that we have a post method, so we actually have to post to this API to get the information that we want. And then slowly but surely, we can start to piece that together and get our information back. And I was able to do some of that. I can show you that right here, like this. And that did not work at all because, as we well know, what could possibly go wrong in a live demo?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So basically what I've been able to come up with is that filter that we saw in Graph X-Ray, which does get me some of that information. I'm able to point to a specific device ID, and then actually that endpoint will return a policy status and just a numeric value. So I had to go and figure out what those were. 2 means succeeded, 1 means conflict, or 6 means conflict, I think, so on and so forth. So still working on this. I hope to have it done by next week. This has been actually quite a fun and albeit challenging exercise. But I wanted to point out both Graph X-Ray is a very useful tool for this, as well as Petri's tool, the IntuneDeviceDetailsGUI. I did take a little bit of inspiration from this tool because if we actually pull up a device here in this tool and create a report, we do get information about the status of an assignment for remediation scripts, for configurations, and for applications. While Petri's code is a lot more advanced than mine, it did help get me to some of the correct endpoints that I needed to get to. So you can see here now that this is populated, if I look at my configurations assignment and go over to the right, you'll see those very things. These have been successfully assigned. These aren't applicable. So this was also a fantastic start. So I just wanted to highlight those 2 tools real quick. For anybody else that's sort of working through things with Graph, these are very, very helpful, and they're eventually going to get me to this solution. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on that as well, because that was my homework for this week. So I think that's enough talking from Andrew for the moment. You have some updates for us, Johan?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Let's see if I can share my screen somehow.
Oh, I think you'll be able to figure it out.
Oh yeah, I can hope. This is not it. We'll come back to this one a little bit later because we had a question popping in earlier about that one. But let's see. There was a thread going on in the community regarding next month or next patch Tuesday. So not yesterday's, but month from now. Regarding new Outlook being automatically installed on Windows 10 devices and also activated on Windows 11 devices. And Microsoft released a blog post that at first was, the wording in that blog post, that definitely had opportunity for growth. But long story short, you can prevent this. So Microsoft released a article or a blog on how to block this new installation from happening on devices. And this is something you will have to, for example, this registry key here for Windows 10, Windows 11, you don't really have an option. You have to remove it after the fact. But for Windows 10, you put in this registry key here and then name the block update, and you give it a value of this. It is not quite clear exactly how that value should look. So there was some follow-up comments on that, and I haven't received a defined answer to it, but the general consensus seems to be either the value should, not that one, copy, paste, either this, or this, or this. Don't know yet. Because this to me doesn't look like a normal registry value at all. So hopefully it will be updated with a better example. I was hoping to just get a ready-made script that I can just use and push out or something like that. But this is for next February. Updates coming out then. I'm not a big fan. I'm currently with Susan on this for sure, that I don't like when features get enabled without me, opting into them. But that seems to be the trend in the industry now. And, well, can't win all the wars. Then we had our friend Rudy Ohms. He was blogging about, you didn't mention this post, did you?
No, I don't believe so.
No. There are some challenges right now with TPM Attestation in Windows 11 24 H2. Seem to be an issue with particular Dell devices, and Rudy Ohms, as always, put together a remarkably deep dive in how all this belong together and what you can do around it and things like that. So highly recommend reading up on this one. This is primarily, of course, for Windows Autopilot, but could be other scenarios also that are being affected by this. Yes, that was all I had in terms of news. I got a shout out here from Mike. Glad to have you joining, Mike. He liked my shirt. We may be a little bit biased since it was a 2 Pint sponsored shirt from one of the early MMSs. But yeah, it's a great shirt. Cannot say otherwise. But we got a question regarding OSD Builder. So it was more or less a follow-up to a blog post that I wrote, and we got this in through our community, but it was around removing apps from a Windows 11 image to basically remove components from the image so they don't have to be updated, reducing the attack surface, of course, also, and also removing some downloads to the device, because if it's not installed, well, don't need to update or download updates to it either. One of the solutions is indeed to use OSD Builder, and that is if you want to remove applications before you deploy the image, so in the image itself. This is very useful if every machine is supposed to have the same apps removed. Brilliant idea to remove it before you even download the image itself. You don't save so much space because they're not very big, but you save a little bit, and it's better that than to install apps and have them remove after the fact. If you need to be more dynamic, I would rather recommend have a script to remove it in whatever deployment solution you're using, because then you can feed different lists for different countries, departments, whatever. But the question was in specific, okay, how would you do that through OSD Builder? What I do recommend regards to OSD Builder, I like to keep a separate VM around. And that VM has a snapshot. So I can always revert it back to a known state for that virtual machine. So I've been doing that. And I just installed the PowerShell module on that one, etc. So the blog post outlines pretty detailed what you need to do. Install these modules from the PowerShell gallery. Very straightforward. You mount an ISO that you have in your environment, and then you import that media into OSD Builder. So what it looks like in OSD Builder when you have imported the media is that you can get some information about that media, and it will tell you what it is. In this case, I actually have multiple versions of Windows 11, so I'm just picking the first one. But then you can generate a task, and when you have a task, you can then tell OSD Builder to build you a new media, a new OS build using that task. So if I go back to the blog post, this command here will create a new task. And when you do, you will get an option here, because I select remove app applications. You will get a list of the apps that are in that image. So you simply run that command, you get the window, you select the apps that you don't want to have. And what that does in the background is that on the wherever you installed OSD Builder, I have it on the C drive in this case, you will have a task folder, and you will get a JSON file for whatever you selected. So if I open up this one in Notepad, this one simply have a list of all the apps that I would like to remove from my image. And this is a well-vetted list of applications that I have here that works for pretty much every organization. These are what I consider safe to remove components from Windows. Enterprise friendly, I think that's the word.
That.
So you create that task, and then, as I showed you, you create an OS build, and you just reference that task. And then you take a really long coffee break, because it takes a while. At the bare minimum, the VM that you're using for this, give it a good few CPUs and some memory to run, and it'll be happy. But the thing is, these builds, even on what I would consider a decent workstation like this one here, it takes a good while to run it. There is really few things you can do to speed it up. So queue up your favorite, Netflix show or whatever when you run that build, and then you have a media, and then you rinse, repeat that process later, next month, and the next month, etc. So that is, long story short, that's how you go through it. If I find the time, I will do a recording end to end, and I'll use some magic video editing to cut out the waits, because nobody wants to wait like 40 minutes to see it. It's fun, but it's not that fun while it's being built. So Marco, who posted the question, I hope this one helps a little bit there. Yeah. And I had a new blog post also, not a very short one. This is how you create a bootable media with a PowerShell script. I was playing around with a community utility called TS Background, a pretty cool utility. And I was making changes in it. And that changes have to go into the media, so I was testing. So I just ran this over and over again until I was happy with it, because you go through that wizard one time, it gets boring after a while. But yeah. And as always, some of the ConfigMgr commandlets, they are just stupidly long in terms of parameters that you throw at them. So I like to use the concept of splatting to basically put them in a little array of parameters instead. Makes it so much easier to see what's going on with it. And then I just tell it to use that param block instead. So not all commandlets support this, but most of them. I've stumbled across a few that doesn't like it. For example, the one for Microsoft Connected Cache doesn't like this. But anywho.
Once you get used to it, though, and start using it, so much easier to read, so much easier to adjust your code if you need to. It's a nice concept, I think.
Yeah. What I do recommend, don't forget this one here. That happened to me earlier today. Couldn't figure out why my machines were just rebooting on me when I started up the new test deployment. I had accidentally flipped that one to true, and I didn't have an unattended deployment.
Whoops.
I didn't have a required deployment to that collection, and then the machine just, oh, no deployment for me, thank you very much, and reboots. So, anywho. Another thing I was working on earlier today was I just updated one of my lab servers here recently to the second release of 2409. So this particular machine. So if you open up the ConfigMgr console, and wait very patiently.
If you weren't live right now, it might even warrant a coffee break.
Well, it's not that bad. But long story, I'm up on the second version of ConfigMgr, and if I go to my boot images, as most of you know, there is a client being injected into the boot image. And every time you update the ConfigMgr server, you have to go in and right-click your boot image and update the EP and next finish. Which is okay if you have one boot image. I have more than one, and I'm lazy. So I wrote a PowerShell script. I think I have it here. It simply gets a list of the boot images. So I have 6 boot images, and then it just loops through each and one of them, and forces an update EP of them. So
Nice.
Makes it easy to update them. So every time you upgrade CM, run the script, walk away, and you're good.
Fantastic stuff.
Should probably upload that one also to the blog, but that's for snowy day. All right. Do we have any questions? That is the question.
We do. We've got a couple that have come in. So the first one here is, could you discuss the pros and cons of handling Intune enrollment via CoMgmt versus GPO? Could we have both, or would they conflict?
I mean, it already is a kind of combination anyway, because there is a policy active when you use allowing ConfigMgr to state those devices anyway. It depends on your licensing primarily, I'll say. For those of you that don't have like real Intune licenses, having them enroll through ConfigMgr is pretty much the only option that I can think of. And that requires that you have a sync configured. It's a service connection point record that need to be in the configuration in your Entra Connect setup. But that's primarily when I've been using the ConfigMgr option for scenarios where we don't have an Intune license. That's also one of the scenarios where you don't get autopilot, for example. If you do not have Intune licenses or don't have a full-blown Entra shiny premium something license. Otherwise, I use enrollment as usual. That's my point on that one.
All right. Yeah, in my experience, I'm typically using the ConfigMgr method myself. Very straightforward. All right. Jamie has an issue here where MDT crashes with 2409, even though it says support is still running until October 2025. Any thoughts on that one?
I haven't seen it crashing on 2409. I play around a little bit with it. I would need a little bit more specifics to what exactly that is crashing.
All right. We'll see if Jamie comes back with any additional info.
I think it's important to know that the big deal that Microsoft had in that announcement was that I want you to move away from using the MDT integrated templates. So if I show one of my Windows 11 images here with or sequences that has an MDT template, this is when you have these, and we've showed this a few times, but you have actions that have that MDT specific name in them, and you have this integration here where you see you have MDT specific actions. If you remove these templates, remove these sequences after creating new ones and then moving changes over to them, you can go ahead and uninstall those extensions. So instead of doing install as you usually do, you select these ones here and you remove them. Then there is no risk of having sequence templates do anything for you. The actual scripts themselves that is being used, that is part of a package. Like if I go here and check my sources, I have all sorts of different MDT packages. These are just scripts that does something. They will work equally fine until VB-script is deprecated eventually. But Microsoft can't really prevent you from running a script. You will be surprised out there how many sequences that today are using still VB-script. What I do recommend is migrate them over to PowerShell. The things that you are using, migrate them over. If you have a front end that is depending on all VB-script, change that over to PowerShell or build something else or buy something else. Because it's no longer developed. The UDI wizard is no longer, haven't changed in 10 years. I got a consulting request from a company like, can you help me create a wizard pane in UDI? I'm like, yeah, I can, but do you really want to? Because there's the development of that is dead, and the templates are going away, so we'll have to do a lot of back-end scripting to get it to work. It's better to just build something different. So that's my take on that one.
Oh, well said. Jamie did follow up saying that it's any sequence with BDD steps in it.
I have not seen failing, and I have deployed a good few of them with 24/9. But it could be something that is unique to that environment. I don't know. I just haven't seen it. And I've seen other people having success running still MDT integrated sequences even in 24/9. So I probably would need some log files or something to be able to tell you what that is about.
All right. Diego is asking us over here on YouTube: Have you seen an issue that devices that are AD joined only don't show the domain admin groups in computer management even when logged in as an administrator, worked in hybrid mode? I can't think of a time that I've come across, if I understand the question correctly, where the groups didn't show for me at all. When logged in as an admin, which he specified.
Well, wait a minute. Domain admin is only there if it is joined to a domain.
Yes. And this, so I guess there may be some clarification here because this does say AD joined. Does that mean Entra joined only?
Yeah, I'm not quite following the question there. If it's Entra join only, it is not joined to Active Directory, meaning it is not hybrid. And then there won't be a domain admin group because that's being added when you join it to an Active Directory domain.
Yep. I concur.
I mean, we can go to a device. I have this one was up and running earlier because I was, as I mentioned, I was troubleshooting imaging. Got all sorts of weird errors, and it turned out that my boot media was asking for required deployment, and I didn't have one. So long story short on that one. But if I go to this one here, this is an ARM device. It's my dev kit device. This one is joined into Android only. This one has those users and those groups and those users on it. So if I check members of this one, for example, I promised you I double clicked it. There will be no domain admin in here.
Yeah.
And these are all Entra groups. So yeah.
But certainly, if you do connect to one that is domain joined, you should see the domain admins there.
Oh yes. Domain joined always add in that by default. That happens. It's like users. If domain users gets added to users, it's been like that since back in the NT4 days.
It's been a while then.
30 some years almost.
Wow.
Next year we get to celebrate NT turning 30. NT4 turning 30. NT3.1 has been out since 93. So.
I'm sure there will be some cakes baked for that one.
It was a classic. It was a great OS when it came. NT4.
Yeah.
At the time, it was great.
Game changer.
Yep.
So I've heard.
Yeah, until they added IIS 3 and forgot to secure it, and a worm came along, and a lot of web servers were infected.
Yeah.
Blaster
so good.
and others and came along. That was fun times.
What'd you say earlier? The definition of fun can be quite broad.
Very broad. Very broad.
All right. We've got Amir's got a question for us here around script errors during ESP. So they have a single PowerShell script, which is now over 2,500 lines, to automate autopilot provisioning. It's running before app deployments during the device setup phase, handling critical tasks for them. Script performs AAD lookups, applies user-specific settings, generates dynamic scripts, scheduled tasks, and for a streamlined setup. But failures will happen during internet issues, or PS Gallery can be out, and ESP isn't going to detect these issues. So users only realize problems after the setup. So the question from Amir is, how do we manage those script errors during ESP? Would a forced reboot act as a retry, or can error feedback be integrated into the ESP to prevent these types of disruptions?
I assume the question is more about how can we make that more resilient and recover from errors that do happen. The challenge there is a lot of the stuff that happens in that particular phase is like a one-try thing. If it fails there, it fails. The only thing I could think of is to do extensive login on your own while it's running, so at least you have a chance to follow up what's going on for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like we have a lot of tools to do other things there, kind of to your point.
No, I don't have really good tips on that one. The only thing I have seen is folks downright using sequences to do complex ESP configurations, because the sequence itself is just an application that has a lot of error handling in it. I'm assuming you can combine it with Service UI to get some interaction on the screen when it's going. Might be able to use something from the app deploy kit as well to drive that script, to have some user interface for it. So basically treat it more like an app or anything that actually overlays something on the screen. It's moments like this you wish you had Niehaus on the call, because he would give us like 7 different
Right.
ideas.
Well, it has been a while since we've had him on. Maybe we could invite him back here soon.
Yeah.
Doesn't help us today.
Not much. No, I'm sorry, Amir. We haven't a fantastic good answer on that one.
Yeah, same. And for me, that's mostly just for these, to avoid these types of challenges. Just try to try to keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, to your point, Johan, a lot of folks have figured out ways around it.
And when you speak about people, he was actually lurking in the background, Mr. Niehaus. Can you repeat the question, Andrew?
Yeah, basically. So Amir's got a PowerShell script that they're using during autopilot, and he was asking how to manage script errors during ESP. Would a forced reboot act as a retry, and can error feedback be integrated into ESP to prevent such disruptions? And for some context, Michael, it was, things happen during a script. PS Gallery can be out, which would cause a script to fail, or an internet issue would cause a script to fail potentially. Trying to work around ESP not detecting these types of things. Oh, yeah, okay. Amir just had a follow-up comment here, too. So they do have logs and can even tell by looking at a device if it failed or not, but the users don't really have that available to them. So if there's some sort of a way to give them a warning that they need to call support, would be helpful.
The only thing I can think of there is the app deploy kit integration and the service UI integration to be called upon, if that can possibly show up something on the screen. Untested, though.
Yeah. Interesting, though, if Amir, if you or if anybody else comes up with something clever for this scenario, please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, Niehaus, he was blogging about some different tricks to show interfaces and whatnot in the out-of-box experience. So might be that bit a bit too early, but part of that branding kit he did some clever things. He showcased some of that we had on our academy. Was some point last year. Wonder where that one ended up. This one. But we showcase some of these scenarios, so maybe review that one. It's just a community course. It's free for anyone to attend, but the recording is available if you want to check it out.
So Michael also chimed in here too. Scripts during ESP wrapped into Win32 apps behave like Win32 apps. Intune would automatically rerun it if the detection rule isn't satisfied. So make sure you only tag the app as installed if it succeeds, and then let Intune run it again.
All right, solid advice. Thank you so much, Michael. All right. Well, I love when the community come together.
That's fantastic. All right. So we've got another question here around Intune policies. When Intune reports a conflict on a policy and it's only reporting one policy as the source, does that mean the conflict is within the same policy? Usually I see two policies with a conflict. In this case, there's a secondary policy reporting in the device configuration list and able to identify that one, but there appears to be a third, not clear which policy that might be.
I have to admit, I've never seen a conflict with a single policy. I didn't think that was even possible.
No, I could see. I agree, as well as with the comment that in here that it is usually two. The only thing that I can think of is really more of a UI issue or a data updating issue. If you're working through conflicts, I could envision a scenario where a single policy would say there's a conflict, but I would also expect that scenario to be cleared up with a little bit of patience. So I have not seen that either. Specifically. I'm trying to think of times when that could be possible, though. Yeah.
No, sorry, I would need a little bit more context on that one. All right, what's next?
Just reading a comment here from Jamie. Do you do much patching around WinRE with automated process using ConfigMgr, and it successfully creates registry key to show WinRE version when it's on a separate partition?
No, that I have not tried. I mean, I've patched WinRE with drivers by mounting it and injecting drivers, because if you're say that your system is configured for RAID in BIOS, which it shouldn't, and you do a reset of the device, you'll just find that it's not capable of booting into WinRE because you cannot read the hard drive anymore, and it gets upset. So I've seen folks mounting that to inject things to it, but nothing specifically for ARM devices. I have to admit, I don't even remember the homework. So my bad on that one, but apparently that was moved from the previous office hours.
Oh, yep. I'm sorry. I missed that first question from Jamie. Good catch.
So now regarding keeping versioning and whatnot, I haven't tried anything like that for WinRE. But I have been mounting it and doing changes to it. And we have showcased Martin Heinken's script several times that adjusts the partition and layout on disks where the WinRE or the partition that where WinRE lives is too small.
Yep. There's a follow-up comment here from Amir. Not sure how to set the detection rule for a script, though. So, Amir, in this case, it would be you take a script and wrap it up as a Win32 app. And then once you assign it out that way, then you would be able to use the detection rules, whether you write a custom script or write something to registry or write something to a file, use it that way. So ignore the scripts feature or the remediations in this particular scenario and just wrap that up.
Yeah, I mean, is my screen live?
Yes.
That very concept is pretty much the same. Is you just want to have an application that copies some drivers or copies some files or whatever that you have in your system. So when you have something you need to do, you just run that script. And either, in this case, I'm running the 32-bit PowerShell because the script is so simple, so it works with both, or you call the 64-bit PowerShell version here from sysnative folder and run it. And then as a detection rule for it, you will have something. In this case, I'm just checking for a file in a folder that the script creates. Then I know it has run successfully.
That's
So that
great
works.
yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, did get a question about the fresh headlines making their ways around the social media this afternoon. So a question coming in from LinkedIn: what's the deal with the ConfigMgr team being laid off in India? Is ConfigMgr going the way of MDT?
Well, it's not entirely, or at least I haven't heard all the details yet, but the general consensus for now seems that there seem to be shuffling around of people. There are also some other layoffs going on at Microsoft. I saw a post earlier today from it, but it seems to be moving into different organizations, folks. So there was some change around the security organization, but also around the ConfigMgr. So I'm afraid it goes toward a trend that we've been seeing for the last years, is that ConfigMgr today is more of a maintenance mode, and obviously it doesn't require same amount of development efforts as it was 5 years back when we had 25 features coming out every single release, and it was released 3 times a year. Now we see just small number of features coming on, and but yeah, it's too early, I think, to draw any conclusion. But it seems like they are doing some changes around on that team.
Right. Just another follow up from Amir here too. It's a good one too. I want to make sure to make this call this out. If they do go through with the Win32 app method, then it just becomes another app that they have no control over the install order. The way that they're deploying this script right now, it's essential for the script to run before all of the applications run.
Yeah. I mean, there are some tricks of controlling the order, making dependencies and whatnot of the applications. It's not ideal, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
Or go over to the new style corporate device identifiers.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, it's nice to have a script run.
Yeah. Does seem like that would be if there's another way to take portions of that script and put them into an app or something like that. Mir even suggests here maybe having both the script and the rest of the apps in one package is a way to go, potentially. But I think seems like maybe at least playing around with Win32 apps or something like that may be helpful. Maybe for some of the parts of the script that actually commonly give you trouble.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a problem downloading a PowerShell module from PowerShell gallery, obviously it can be part of an application, and the module will then be, copied down locally that way.
Yep. All right. Jamie's asking, have we done the rollout of blocking rollback of virtualization-based security related to the CVE 2024-21302?
That the secure boot one?
Secure kernel mode elevation. No, this one's a little bit more recent, I think. secure boots from the beginning of last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now this one I have done. No, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, same here. Configure some audit settings. Yeah, to do a little bit of reading.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I am not familiar with this one.
All right. Then another question from over here on LinkedIn: where is imaging going? Is it all going to be done in Intune? Excuse me.
No, I don't see Microsoft adding in imaging to Intune anytime soon. You have to use ConfigMgr or something else to do imaging. You need a deployment solution to do imaging. And the only one that Microsoft provides at the moment that is supported happened to be ConfigMgr. Plenty of other solutions out there, but they won't be supported by Microsoft specifically. That will be either supported by the community, in the case of, for example, OSD Cloud or PSD or even MDT for that matter, still works. Deploy R from 2Pint will be supported by 2Pint. Whatever other third-party vendor deployment solution, Tanium, Smart Deploy, and others, they will be supported by their organizations. But what's common for many of those third-party deployment solutions is they are indeed using Microsoft tools in the background. They're using components from the ADK often, not always, but often. And those, of course, will be supported. So, yeah.
Or even, as Mr. Terrell says here, USB sticks for the win. You can use good old-fashioned USB media.
You could.
That might fit
also
into
use,
some folks' definition of fun.
yeah, you can also use thumb to drive in nails when building houses. It's a little bit more effective with a hammer.
A little bit, yeah.
So having the right tools is usually the better option. I don't get me wrong, offline media, USB media definitely have its use cases, its scenarios. But if you're an enterprise company and you want to do mass deployment, imaging, etc., no.
Yeah.
Network deployment is easier.
Yep. But I mean, even last MMS back in October, I talked to a couple of folks that, that is, at least for break fix, that's their solution. They've got a whole bunch of USB sticks.
Yeah, this was me a few years back. Spent 2 weeks in a data warehouse, or not data warehouse, a warehouse, copying USB sticks,
It's
using
awesome.
it to deploy devices for testing. It was fun the first few hundred you do, but then it gets boring.
Yeah.
I wrote eventually a PowerShell script that did it, but yeah, here we are. Do
Indeed.
not recommend. Yeah, and to Terrell's comment, because obviously that was from Terrell, Microsoft is having this as an option to use a USB stick instead of a real deployment solution. And over my dead body, I'm going to recommend that for most companies. It's just not going to happen. Pick something that works for you. Imaging is not going away completely. It just changes who is doing the imaging, what solutions we're using to do imaging, how complex they are. A lot of things in the industry right now seems to be, all right, take a fairly complex OSD and dumb it down, make it simpler. All right, I get that. I don't have a problem with that at all. But going away, no. There will always be a need for something. So make sure you have something. that's going to be my final statement for this call.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up today.
Yeah. All right. Where did I go here? Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for chiming in with questions and comments and all of that good stuff. We hope to see you again next Wednesday. Thank you for now.
Thanks, everybody.